My name is Luna, I'm 30 years old. Today I'm going to talk about the day that at my baby shower, my brother stole the spotlight, but I found something that changed everything. It's a pleasure to have you here. Stay tuned until the end and tell me which city you're watching from. I want to know how far my story has gone. And click on like, subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss the next stories here on the channel. I was 8 months pregnant and already exhausted when my mother, Patricia, insisted on throwing me a baby shower. I didn't want a big event, just a few close friends, a cake, something simple. But Patricia said, "It's your first baby, Luna. We need to celebrate properly." Of course, by properly, she meant inviting every distant cousin, neighbor, and family friend we hadn't seen in years. She handled all the arrangements, down to the pink floral centerpieces and the guest list. I should have seen it coming. When the day arrived, I felt like a guest at someone else's party. Patricia was everywhere, greeting people, laughing loudly, carrying trays of food. I mostly sat in the corner, ankles swollen, smiling politely. I had pictured something more intimate. Something that made me feel like this new life inside me mattered. Then Damon arrived. My younger brother walked in like he was the main act. Tall, confident, perfectly styled as always, and beside him was a woman I didn't recognize. A glamorous redhead in designer heels, and a white lace jumpsuit. She looked like a celebrity. "Everyone," Patricia called out, clapping her hands. "Look who's here. Damon and Clarissa." Clarissa. Of course she had a name like that. Everyone clapped. Some even stood to hug them. I watched as my mother ran over and threw her arms around Damon like he had just come home from war. Then she pulled Clarissa into the spotlight and said, "Isn't she just stunning? My future daughter-in-law." Future daughter-in-law. I blinked. Clarissa waved her left hand with an oversized diamond ring, and Damon grinned. "We're engaged," he announced. "And opening our own real estate firm next month." Applause. Cheers. Even my Aunt Nora wiped a tear. I glanced down at my belly. My baby kicked. I hadn't even opened my gifts yet. The rest of the afternoon blurred. People buzzed around Damon and Clarissa. I smiled through it, nodding, trying not to feel like an afterthought. But it was hard. Patricia beamed the entire time, introducing Clarissa as if she'd already been part of the family for years. No one asked me how I was feeling. When the cake came out, Patricia had written "Congratulations, Luna" in small cursive on the corner, but the centerpiece was a framed photo of Damon and Clarissa holding hands, which she placed right next to it. "I just thought it was a nice touch," she said. I don't remember much after that. That night, I lay in bed with my back aching, listening to the wind outside. My partner, Eric, rubbed my feet in silence. He didn't have to say anything. We both knew what the day had been. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Patricia screaming. I rushed downstairs as fast as I could, my heart pounding, thinking something had happened to her. She was in the kitchen, standing over the recycling bin, holding something in her trembling hand. "Where did this come from?" she asked, her voice shaking. It was an envelope. Crumpled, torn open at the top. A legal envelope with my name on it. I'd forgotten all about it. Inside was a letter my father had left for me. He died 3 years ago, and he'd given it to me shortly before he passed, telling me to read it when I felt ready. I finally did the week before the baby shower, and I'd accidentally thrown it in with the recycling while cleaning. Patricia held the letter like it was poison. Her face had gone pale. "You weren't supposed to see this," she whispered. And that's when I realized she already knew. She already knew everything my father had written. About Damon. About the house. About the truth that shattered everything I thought I understood about our family. And now she had to face it. I stood there, barefoot, belly full of life, staring at the woman who had raised me like a stranger. And I knew everything was about to change. Patricia sat down slowly at the kitchen table, her eyes glued to the letter. She didn't look at me. I could see her lips moving slightly, reading certain lines over and over again. Her hands were shaking. I wanted to sit too, but I couldn't. The tension in the room wrapped around my chest like a belt. I leaned against the counter and waited. Finally, she spoke. He never told me he gave you this. He told me to keep it private," I replied. "Said I should only read it when I was ready. I read it last week." She nodded slowly, still not looking at me. The letter was short. My father's handwriting was still so familiar, it hurt to see. He wrote about how sorry he was that he hadn't done more for me while he was alive. How he regretted not standing up to Patricia when she pushed for Damon to take over everything, especially the house. And then he wrote the part that burned in my mind. The house was always meant for you, Luna. You've always been the steady one. I only stayed quiet because I thought your mother would come around. I was wrong. I'm sorry for not fighting harder. I remembered crying when I read that. Not because I wanted the house, but because it was the first time anyone had ever said out loud that I mattered more than Damon. Patricia placed the letter back on the table gently, like it was glass. I didn't think he meant it, she whispered. I thought he was just being sentimental. No. He meant it. Silence stretched between us. Then finally she looked up. Her eyes were red, but dry. I gave the deed to Damon 3 months ago. I felt the words hit like a slap. She hadn't just ignored my father's wishes, she had erased them. Quietly. With a signature. You knew, I said. You knew he wanted it for me. She nodded. But Damon needed it. He had plans. You have Eric. You're building a family. That's when I realized. In her mind, I was always going to be fine. Because I didn't complain. Because I didn't demand. Damon needed things, I adapted. And now I was supposed to be grateful just to be included. I needed it too, I said quietly. She flinched. Not visibly, but I saw her chest tighten. I needed to feel like I wasn't invisible. Patricia looked at me then, really looked. And for the first time, I saw confusion in her face. Like she was looking at a painting she'd seen her whole life, but suddenly noticing it was upside down. But you're strong, she said. You've always been the strong one. No. I've always been the quiet one. That's not the same. She looked away. I walked out of the kitchen and went back upstairs. Eric was folding baby clothes in our room. When he looked at me, I didn't have to say anything. He opened his arms and held me while I cried into his chest. That afternoon, Damon called. I let it go to voicemail. He left a cheerful message about the baby shower, and how great it was to see everyone. Not a word about the letter. Of course not. Patricia wouldn't tell him. Not yet. But something had shifted. I could feel it. The next few days were quiet. Patricia didn't call. I didn't reach out either. Then on Thursday, I received a certified letter in the mail. From her. Inside was a notarized statement. She was transferring the house back to my name. No explanation. No apology. Just a line at the bottom. This is what your father wanted. It didn't feel like a gift. It felt like an admission. When I showed it to Eric, he didn't say anything at first. Then he hugged me. You finally have something that's yours, he said. But it wasn't about the house. It was about being seen. After years of being the background character in my own family, I finally had proof that someone, my father, had seen me. That I mattered. That night, I sat in the nursery alone, holding the letter from my father. I whispered, "Thank you." Then I folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer next to the crib. Because someday, I'd want my child to know that we don't have to scream to be heard. But we do have to speak. What would you do if it were you? Tell me in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe and activate the bell to receive all notifications so you don't miss the next story. I didn't hear from Damon until Sunday. He showed up at my door without calling. Eric was out getting groceries, and I was alone, sorting through a pile of baby blankets and bottles we'd received as gifts. I didn't want to let him in, but I did. He stepped inside like nothing had happened. "Hey Lou," he said, using the nickname from childhood. "You look ready to pop." "Sit," I said, pointing to the couch. He looked around, as if expecting to see our mother. When he didn't, he sat still smiling. "I heard Mom gave the house to you. Congrats, I guess. Weird timing though." I leaned against the doorway and crossed my arms. She didn't give it to me. She returned it. It was never hers to give. His face twitched just slightly. "Look," he said. "I know you're hormonal right now, and maybe this feels like a big deal, but I'm starting a business, Luna. That house was an asset. I had plans." I stared at him. "You had plans with something that wasn't yours." He sighed, leaned forward. We're family. What's mine is yours, right? I just thought you wouldn't care. You never do. You've always been so low maintenance. There it was again. That old narrative. I was quiet, so I didn't count. I do care, I said. I cared every time you got praised for doing the bare minimum. I cared every time Mom asked about your job and ignored mine. I cared when I announced my pregnancy and she changed the subject to your promotion. He looked stunned, like the air had shifted. You're being unfair. No, Damon. I'm being honest. For once. He stood. You think you're the victim here? He asked, voice rising. You got the house, Luna. You won. What else do you want? I stepped forward, closing the space between us. I want you to understand that I'm not the problem. I want you to stop acting like you've been cheated when you've been handed everything. And I want peace. Real peace. That starts with you staying out of my home and my business. He opened his mouth, but I was already walking to the door. He left without another word. That night Patricia called. I didn't answer. She texted. I think we should talk. I replied with one sentence. I think we've said enough for now. I didn't sleep much. My mind kept circling back to the look on Damon's face. Not guilt, disbelief. As if he still couldn't grasp that things weren't going back to the way they were. Eric came to bed late, and I asked him, do you think people like that ever change? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, only when they lose something that matters. The next morning, I drove to the cemetery with the letter from my father. I sat by his grave and read it again out loud. I finally said what needed to be said. I whispered. It hurt. But it's done. A soft breeze passed through the trees. I liked to think he heard me. When I got home, there was a card in the mailbox. No envelope. Just a folded piece of paper. It was from Patricia. I'm not ready to talk yet, it said. But I'm listening. It wasn't an apology. But it was a start. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe, just maybe, things wouldn't go back to how they were. Maybe they could be better. 2 weeks passed without a word from Patricia. I didn't reach out either. I focused on preparing for the baby, finalizing doctor's appointments, folding tiny onesies, and placing little books on the shelf in the nursery. The silence from my family was strange, but peaceful. Then one morning, she showed up at my door. I heard the knock while making tea. Eric was at work. I opened the door and saw her standing there in a beige cardigan, holding a small paper bag. I brought lemon scones, she said. I know you used to like them. It was such a delicate, outdated peace offering that I didn't know what to do except open the door. She stepped in slowly, looking around like she was in someone else's house. Everything looks beautiful, she said. You've done a wonderful job. I nodded, said thank you, and led her to the kitchen. She placed the scones on the table and sat down. There was a pause. Then she said, I don't know how to talk to you anymore. You never really did, I replied. She winced. But she didn't argue. I was raised to believe that survival meant pushing forward, she said. No time for emotions. No space for softness. I passed that on to you. And I see now it wasn't fair. I sat down across from her. You made me feel like being quiet was the only way to be loved. She nodded. I know. That admission alone loosened something in my chest. I want to change that, she said. I don't expect you to forgive everything. But I don't want to lose you. Or my grandchild. My throat tightened. I looked away, blinking hard. Then stopped pretending everything was fine. And stopped protecting Damon when he hurts people. She didn't reply right away. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a folded letter. I wrote him this, she said. You don't have to read it. But I told him the truth. About what I did. About what your father wanted. And that it's time he stood on his own. I stared at the letter in her hand. That she was even offering it was something I never imagined I'd see. I also told him I won't be helping with the business anymore, she added. If he wants it, he'll have to earn it. I exhaled. Slowly. I hadn't realized how much I'd been bracing myself. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just sat there, two women with a long road behind and a strange one ahead. After she left, I went to the nursery and sat in the rocking chair. I held my belly. feeling the baby move beneath my hands. And for the first time, I believed I could give my child something better. That night, Damon texted. Just one sentence. So this is how it ends. I didn't reply. Because it wasn't the end. It was the start of me choosing peace over permission. And that would have to be enough. The baby arrived 3 weeks early. It happened fast. My water broke in the middle of the night, and Eric drove like a man possessed to the hospital. The contractions came hard and fast. I barely had time to be scared. When they placed her in my arms, everything else disappeared. All the noise, all the tension, it melted away. She was perfect. Soft and warm and red-faced, with a little tuft of dark hair. My daughter. We named her June. Patricia didn't come to the hospital. I wasn't sure if that was her choice or if she was waiting for an invitation. Either way, I didn't reach out. I needed space. I needed the first hours of June's life to be free of conflict. We came home 2 days later. Eric was gentle and quiet, taking care of everything so I could rest. Sometimes, I'd wake up and find him holding June against his chest in the rocking chair, humming softly. That first week was a blur of diapers, sleepless nights, and the kind of joy that hurts because it's so full. Then one afternoon, I heard a knock at the door. I froze. June was asleep in her bassinet. Eric was napping in the bedroom. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. It was Patricia. I opened the door slowly. She looked tired. Not in the usual, I didn't sleep well way. Tired like something inside her was wearing out. I just wanted to drop something off, she said, holding out a small blue box. I didn't take it at first. It's just a keepsake, she said. Something of your father's. I took the box and stepped outside, closing the door gently behind me. We stood on the porch. I heard about the baby, she said. June. Beautiful name. Thank you. She looked down at her hands, then back at me. I wanted to be there. But I understood why I wasn't. I nodded. There wasn't much to say. I'm trying, Luna, she said quietly. I know it doesn't erase anything. But I'm trying. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I opened the box. Inside was my father's old pocket watch. The one he used to wind every night before bed. I remembered the sound it made. Steady. Predictable. Comforting. He wanted her to have it, Patricia said. Said maybe one day she'd hold on to it like you held on to him. My throat tightened. I closed the box. I appreciate it, I said. She nodded and stepped back. I'll leave you to your peace. She walked to her car without waiting for anything more. When I stepped back inside, June stirred. I picked her up and held her close, breathing her in. I didn't know what the future would look like. I didn't know if my mother and I would ever truly be close. But in that moment, I felt the weight of generations shifting. My daughter would never have to beg for love. Not from me. And as I rocked her gently, I realized something powerful. This house, this child, this quiet strength. I didn't win them. I reclaimed them. Summer turned into fall. The days grew shorter. And the air carried that cool, crisp scent I had always loved. June was nearly 3 months old. She smiled now, cooed when I sang, and held tight to my finger with surprising strength. Every day, she became more herself. We settled into a rhythm. I didn't hear from Damon again. Eric quietly installed new locks on the house one afternoon without saying a word. I didn't ask if something had happened. I didn't need to. Then one Saturday morning, Patricia called. I'd like to see her, she said. If that's okay. I didn't answer right away. I looked at June, who was napping in the sunlight, one chubby hand curled into a fist. Okay, I said. Tomorrow. 1 hour. She arrived on time. Not early. Not late. She brought a single stuffed bunny, not in a gift bag, not with a bow. Just a small, soft toy held gently in her hand. I took it and nodded. She washed her hands at the kitchen sink without being asked, then followed me into the living room where June lay on her blanket, kicking and gurgling. Patricia sat down on the floor beside her, slowly, carefully. For the next hour, she didn't talk about herself. She didn't ask about Damon. She didn't offer advice or comment on the nursery. She just watched June. Made soft sounds. Let her tiny granddaughter wrap a fist around her pinky. When the hour passed, she stood up. Thank you, she said, for letting me see her. You're welcome. She walked to the door. Then she turned back. I used to think love had to be earned. That if I made everyone proud, it meant I was doing things right. But all it ever did was keep me afraid. She paused. I'm done being afraid, Luna. If you let me, I want to show you who I am when I'm not trying so hard to be right. I didn't say anything. Just nodded. That night, I took the pocket watch from its box and set it on the dresser in June's room. I wound it once, just to hear it tick. A few weeks later, I walked through the house while June napped and stopped in front of the hallway mirror. For the first time in my life, I saw someone whole looking back at me. Not the invisible daughter. Not the peacekeeper. Just me. I smiled. Eric came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. You okay? He asked. I am, I said. And I meant it. Not because everything was perfect, but because I had finally stopped shrinking to keep others comfortable. I had taken the space I needed, made room for the kind of love that doesn't come with conditions. That was the real inheritance. Not the house. Not the letter. Not even the apology. It was the life I built when I stopped waiting for someone to give it to me. It was mine. If you like stories like these, click like, subscribe, activate the bell, and send it to someone you think will also like it.